Hey there, welcome back to the Hodcast, where we talk all things construction, training, and beyond. Today on the Hodcast, I'm joined by someone who has spent his entire career fighting for young people and for construction industry that actually works. This is a conversation about training, purpose, and the future of our industry. Here's my conversation with Martyn Price. Martyn, if we rebuilt the construction skills system from scratch, where would you start?
Wow. That's a great place to start as a question. I want to say new entrants, but I think you need the infrastructure to support new entrants to come into the sector. I'm a big fan of pre-employability, young people, careers in construction, but I think I couldn't start there for obvious reasons, that there isn't the mentors, the guidance and the infrastructure to bring those young people through. So I build it with the cognizance of designing it to attract as many young people as possible. But I'd build it with probably the knowledge of what I'm trying to achieve in terms of the technical and professional people that we need to attract those young people. Okay,
so we're starting at the beginning and the end, which I love. The end, you want the end point. Yeah. Love that. Absolutely love that. Well, fortunately, you're not at the end point of your career. I'm sure you'd love to be soon.
I think my wife would like me to be at the end of my career, but I just keep no.
Well, you are. Fortunately, we've had a long conversation beforehand, and you are an incredibly busy person. You get up incredibly early most days. But take me back to the beginning, right at the beginning of your working life, before the work. All the things you're doing now, before you got letters at the front of your at the end of your name. What was your very first day like on a building site, or what were the smells, what were the feelings, how were you treated?
I can remember the first day in a joinery shop as such, because we were in woodwork class when we were at college. So I can remember that because I was in that intake period where we did 6 months block. So it was YTS or similar. We did a 6 month block at college. So I spent a lot of time in the joiner shop because it was carpentry and joinery, the apprenticeship I did. So the machines, the wood, the dust extraction, I can still smell that. And occasionally when I'm near somewhere, that kind of still resonates with me. But I think one of my first site experiences, which was probably in my first week, I think I had a week on site in a Easter holiday before I'd left school, just as a kind of a taster, to make sure it was what I wanted to do. I remember going to this site, and I don't know what day of the week it was. It might have been the very first morning, but at some point nearer to lunchtime or break time, I remember being press ganged by a group of burly ass builders who inserted a scaffold pole through my jumper and hung me up with a hook on a tower crane and suspended me over the compound for the duration of the break. So I missed my lunch break, but for some bizarre reason, some months later, I still decided that the construction industry was where I wanted. I mean, we wouldn't do that now for health and safety reasons, obviously, but I did spend one of my early mornings swinging around a building site, feeling a bit like Jesus Christ on a on a tower crane, looking down on the compound.
I must say, I wouldn't, for anyone who may be new to construction, that is certainly not what we do today. And health and safety isn't the only issue going on there. But that was a while ago. Yeah. So will we allow it? I don't know. Can't change it. So we'll just embrace it. Yeah. That's But yeah, you're still here. You're still in the industry, and arguably campaigning and working to make sure that doesn't happen again. But also that lots of young people do feel safe and loved and cared for in the industry.
I think banter is good. I think it's about managed banter and still having that. Yeah. The crack. You want people to kind of feel that they can enjoy their workplace, but not to the extent of some of the things that happened in the past.
Well, a joke's only funny if everyone's laughing, right? Yeah. It's not funny if everyone's laughing at you. In some way you must have found it fun or an initiation.
Well, it didn't put me off to the point that months later I signed up.
You came back. Yeah. Oh, love it. Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Well, you do so many things. You've got an MBE. You are accredited in your field. You're to almost the highest accreditation you could possibly get. tell me a little bit about what it is that you do, because I could try and explain it for the next hour, probably two. So if you could do it maybe in the next 2 minutes, that would be super helpful.
Okay. Left school at 16, and apart from being suspended by on a tower crane, I joined as a carpentry apprentice. But now I've had different roles in industry. But now, more than anything, I'm an advocate for social mobility. I'm a trustee of Youth Build, which is a charity supporting disadvantaged people to come into the sector. I'm really passionate about that, so we can talk more about that later. But that's a role I'm involved in. I've been a trustee for about 3 or 4 years, but I've worked with Youth Build and known of Youth Build for 15 and advocated a lot of the good work that they do. I'm also a founding member and now the chair of Constructure, which used to be the CCATF, Cross Industry Construction Apprenticeship Task Force. You can see why we changed our name.
Really
clearly.
glad you know that.
Yeah. And at that point, 2007, CCATF was formed. It was then about apprenticeships. It was born out of a conversation in a CITB board meeting, which was, what can we do to change the face of the industry and encourage more more new entrants to join? And a conversation instilled then in terms of CITB were doing what they could do. What could the employers within the room feel they could do differently? And it was about advocating and championing and promoting the virtues of apprenticeships to the wider construction landscape. So it wasn't seen to be CITB initiated; it was employer led, which was the whole idea. And that has been and continues to be really successful. But we had a name change in 2023. Because the landscape had changed significantly from what was just apprenticeships. When we talked about new entrants in that point in time, it was about apprentices coming into the sector. And over the years, we've got into T-levels, we've got into skills boot camps, we've got into pre-employability, and we've got all of these different pathways, as well as all of the upskilling, the MVQs, the qualification strategy, and CCATF as a name, recognising just apprenticeships, didn't feel like it was covering the broader skills landscape in terms of that attraction. So the whole idea of the name change was a bit of a reset then to kind of still advocate apprenticeships. I suppose that's still the golden thread of our activity, but to recognise apprenticeships, but also recognise all of the ancillary and complementary things that could still lead onto an apprenticeship, but weren't necessarily that initial enabler. So that's something that I have an enormous amount of pride and pleasure in being involved in. I'm co-chair of Construct, which is a concrete sectors group, which supports concrete structures members in terms of workforce development, health and safety, training, and sustainability. And we've got the membership probably represents about 30,000 employers. Wow. I should have gone. In Constructure, we've got 250 members. I think there's 50,000 apprentices employed within the membership. Wow. And then Construct has 30,000 members, and it's anything and everything to do with concrete frame.
So it's fair to say you're a mover and a shaker in the industry. And you've got your MBE. You got your MBE for services to vocational skills. Yeah, which is great. And
yeah.
Got to meet the Queen. And did you get to shake her hand?
I don't think you shake the Queen's hand.
Do you not?
No. You just
nod
in the appropriate place. Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Mum.
Yeah.
Don't put me in the prison.
I don't know about moving and shaker. The thing for me is I get up. For however I ended up in the sector, I get up every single morning. I love the work I do. It doesn't matter where I go. Young people, skills, whether it's good for a business, whether it's good for a young person, I just enjoy what I do and where I go. So yeah.
Well, that's not normal. Most people, many people find it a chore to do their job, and it's a privilege, I guess, for you to have a job or to have made yourself a job that you get up every day and think, do you know what? Amazing. Yeah. I love this job. I love what I do. I love where I go. I love the people I meet.
You have to make the most of your own circumstances, and I guess from that point of entry, one of the things I talk about, particularly to young people, is your point of entry does not define where you get to from. I think that's true in most sectors. You can get to different places from your point of entry, but it feels so relevant from a construction point of view. And I say that because I've seen where different people have come from and where they've ended up, and the journey that they've had in between. And my enjoyment for what I do, there's an element that it's a sector I work in, but I suppose I do get to shape some of the things I'm involved in because it's now more skills and people related. I've morphed into doing the things that probably give me that return. You know, there was a point in time where when I got my MBE in 2012, I sometimes now I wonder whether, you know, from a deserving point of view, but it's all it is for me is I use it as a determination to still want to make a difference, to feel like there will be a point in time when I do retire and I sit back and I kind of look at what I've done, and you feel that you've everything you could have done to champion the sector and to champion that, you've done to the best of your ability. So there's still an element where at times I don't know whether I feel as deserving as I should do, but all it does is motivate me to continue to do what I do for the greater good of businesses, of young people coming into the sector.
Well, it's certainly commendable, and a long journey you've been on as well. A lot of this conversation is going to be around the Skills Vision Report 2025, which was released just a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
September. That was a Constructure document.
Yeah.
In association with a bunch of other organisations who all sort of added to the document, and it was collated. Yeah. And I think did you do the foreword?
Mark Farmer did the foreword.
Oh, that was it. Mark Farmer did the executive summary. Yeah, love that. Well, and Mark Farmer's a guy to listen to, right? So
100%.
He's certainly worth it. What can we put that in the link? Can we put that in the description of this?
Absolutely.
We'll put it in the link so that people can have a read, and because it is a good read. It's not super long. It's not that difficult to get your head around. And there are some really good articles in there.
I mean, the report itself came out of the Construction Skills Mission Board and government's announcement of 625 million to support the construction sector. And there's some really, really great things in that concept, that 625 million. Some of the construction technical excellence colleges and pre-employability and skills. But where we've got the case studies is, and what we did is we convened two meetings. We had a round table at the Institution of Civil Engineers, and then we used the construction conference in July to kind of engage with the audience and understand what that we were doing, or what that was in the mission board probably wasn't captured in terms of employer ownership and employer leadership within certain models around skills delivery. And that's where I suppose the brainchild, the thought process come from. And all we've done then is go out to people who are doing great pieces of work, some of which probably wouldn't be wholeheartedly embraced within the Construction Skills Mission Board and the 625 million, and use it as a little bit of a pushback to government and say, this is great, but there are other recommendations and other things that are going on in the sector where we feel there should be a little bit more recognition of employer ownership and some cognizance of employers who are doing good things. So the case studies and the examples are things that we've teased out where this is great, but it wouldn't probably sit within the infrastructure of the mission board, but it's baby and bathwater. They're the things that we need to embrace and we need to do more of, and we need to use as catalysts to encourage other employers to do the same.
Yeah, that is exactly it, because it's great that the government have recognised that the industry need a bit of a bump and a push. Yeah. But when it's hard, isn't it? The bureaucracy that comes with government funding and all those things, and they have to be very secure places that things sit, different things sit in, and the document seems to be, hey, what about this stuff? Yeah. Some of the things we're going to touch on today, pre-employment, which is something I know you're super passionate about. It's almost a bit broken, I think. Yeah. And you're sort of making it your mission to fix it in some ways. But the report shows that FE colleges can't produce work-ready learners. Why is this happening? And I guess how long have we been there for? How long have we been in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm mixed about FE. Mixed from the point of view of sometimes I think they get bad press, and there's a lot of good work. You talked about my initial interest in the sector. I had some fantastic lecturers at college at different points of my academic journey that have kind of been inspirational for me, and have been people that I can still draw on things that they've said and things that make a difference to me, both in the workplace and in training. But it's that. Sometimes it's that generic program. It's kind of, program start in September. They run it. It's very
That's
rigid.
That's the difficulty, isn't it? Because you get someone who's probably really passionate about the thing that they're teaching, but then they don't get to necessarily teach the thing that they're that passionate about, or they have to do it in this incredibly structured way, and they don't get to tailor it to the people and all of that stuff. So. And I'm not a big fan of FE, but I am a big fan of the people in FE. If that makes sense. The people, the structure of it is hard.
Yeah, but there is an element of kind of square peg and round hole. The industry is so diverse. We've got a brickwork apprenticeship, we've got a carpentry apprenticeship. Yet, if you look at the feeder organisations that use that generic apprenticeship, they're all different. They've all got different nuances of work. Whether if it's brickwork, coming back to your kind of subject matter, you've got company that it's walls and line and length and kind of it's home building, and then you've got arches and intricate columns and all sorts of different things. We've got a brickwork apprenticeship. And FE are trying to teach people to kind of be, to cover that whole spectrum, and. I suppose that's part of the qualification structure. It has to be generic enough that everybody's happy. When we were going through the apprenticeship reforms, there was a little bit of to and fro in between some of the sector bodies that were looking at a kind of a master bricklayer, and some of the more home builders that were looking at more of a level 2. And we've ended up with this hybrid that's something in the middle. But it neither suits either purpose. It's probably more robust than the home builders need necessarily in some cases, not all. But it's probably not of a high enough standard to meet some of the master builders and some of the federation bodies who are doing specialist work and heritage work and things like that. So, but then that's true of most disciplines that we've got within the sector. There are different levels of quality and professionalism that companies and sectors that the companies operate in.
I never really thought of college as pre-employment. I'll be brutally honest with you. So, and I know that sounds a bit stupid almost, but I never thought of my college experience as a pre-employment experience.
But I don't know we would call it pre-employment today, would we? Not in the context of, there is some pre-employability programs or. Even some of the diplomas, when you've signed up for a full-time study program, which often happens in a young person's got an interest in a vocational area, they can't find an apprenticeship, they sign up on a diploma. Some parts of industry are very sceptical. Well, he's done a diploma, he's got no experience. But the young person, he or she, has shown that commitment to the sector and have signed up on a study program. They're only going to get work-related experience and properly trained when they're in an environment where all of the nuances and all of the things you want in terms of skills, knowledge and behaviour, you train in the workplace. So we make that person more rounded. But that's the best that young person can do and the college can do in the absence of an employer being there at day one.
Yeah, and that's the hard, because employers want something different to what colleges want, I guess, isn't it? And that's we're going to talk about that shortly, the idea of being employer-led, but I want to get deep into that. 24% of full-time construction students, so I'm guessing they're FE college students, enter the trade. What does pre-employment look like? Best practice or model? What's the best model in 2025? And this will go out at the end of December, around Christmas. We should have had our Christmas jumpers on today, but we're not quite there yet. But in say 2026, what does it need to look like now?
Another really challenging question. Thank you, Sam. But
you're welcome.
It's about that one size fits all again, because when you talk about pre-employability, from our point of view, unless you've got site-ready solutions where Gary Staines is, and you're very clear about that pathways for bricklayers, and then I guess not all of the people that would come through that necessarily are right to be bricklayers. When you've got a pre-employability program, it's what are you trying to serve? Are you trying to run a construction generic course that's an attraction for a talent pool of people that's got 240 and more different trade occupations or pathways in it in terms of routes that you can pursue, or are you specialising in a really niche area? And for me, good pre-employability needs employers around it. So if a training provider or a college is scoping that pre-employability program, it should be done with an end goal in sight, i.e. we've got destinations for these young people. So if it's more concrete, if it's more brickwork, if it's more carpentry related, and that's the kind of tasters that you're offering through the pre-employability, it's because you've got those pathways, those destinations for those young people to go into and onto. Now, that doesn't mean to say that all of those young people are right for that, but what we also need to do, I think, with the pre-employability is to kind of recognise that you've shown a sector interest, that it's still. I speak to people and they say, what do you want to do? And they say, desperate to get into construction, but they don't know what that means. Yeah, so they could go on a brickwork or a carpentry course and kind of go, it doesn't fit. I still feel.
What do you think though that? Because I've never got into this with anyone before. What do you think that they mean by saying that? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that means different things to different people. So for some, they would be very clear. Yesterday, when I drilled down with a young person, they wanted to be a plant operator, but they didn't want to work on building sites. And I'm kind of, okay. They didn't want to like labouring. They didn't see themselves being that kind of out on site, but they saw themselves very plant orientated, hand-eye coordination, driving machinery. But that doesn't necessarily come at an entry level. You have to work out where and how you can do that in a safe environment. But I think some people, they say that because it's a feeling. I don't know that I was destined to be a carpenter at 16 and go, I want to be a carpenter. I think it was, whilst I did do carpentry, I think it was more about the sector appealed to me. And I could have done another trade and enjoyed it just as well and maybe got to a similar place as I am today.
What do you think then about your journey? And we are going a little bit around the houses. What do you think about your journey that brought you in? Like, because you said about the sector, you like the sector, but you know, and joinery was your way in.
Yeah.
But it was the sector. What was it about the sector, and is that still applicable now?
I come into a family business, so there was a kind of an opportunity for me to pursue a career into carpentry, and there are people, when they say construction, they generally feel that it's outdoor. There's kind of the teamwork in, and if you look at a CV and you look at skill sets, or you probe with a young person, what is it that you're, you know, when you talk about teamwork in and a part of a community, then you can see how some of that aligns to a career in construction. You can see how that's compatible. What that doesn't tell you specifically, because there's a lot of it that's hand tools, there's a lot of it that's trade, or the trades are very much hand skills. That doesn't necessarily say that, well, you'll be a good plumber, or you'll be a good electrician, or you'll be a good bricklayer. So all of that, I think, is still up for grabs. One of the things I think we could do better is learning from the armed forces. When you see people, when the armed forces recruit, and probably this isn't a very articulate answer. It's more, it feels like you recruit. You don't see people who say, I'm going in the army because I want to be an electrician or I want to be an engineer. They go in the army for a vocational pathway. And what I think we could try and do differently from a construction point of view is harness the potential of construction pathways for the entirety of what we've got to offer, and be really clear about all of those differences, and then let people kind of, so you garner that interest first, so we get a wider pool of people wanting to join the sector, and then let people find their way. And maybe the armed forces have got the unique ability with the way that they train to kind of go, you'd be good as a electrician, you'd be good as an engineer, you'd be, and they let them apprenticeship skills kind of develop after their point of entry.
Well, the army, the armed forces is an interesting one. One of my friends joined the Marines a little while ago, and apparently, again, I'm not an expert. Apparently, the Marines is different to the army, which is different to the Air Force.
Yeah.
So the army, you go in seemingly, and you go in and join a regiment.
Yeah.
So you attach to a regiment at the start. So you'd be a Green Jacket, or you'd be a sapper, or you'd be whatever it is. Whereas my friend who went into the Marines, you go and do basic training in the Marines.
Yeah.
For X amount, I think it's 12 weeks or something, and then you go and you specialise. So you get an idea of what it is you want to do before you.
Yeah, but we haven't got that luxury, have we, from a construction point of view? Because whether these young people sit in terms of the host employer, who's putting them through this altruistic program that then lets them decide that they want to work for a specialist contractor, be that me or be that somebody else.
But do you think then pre-employability starts earlier? So pre-employability isn't 16 years old. Maybe pre-employability is like 6 years old. And I'm not saying that they will want to be employed at 6 years old, but my 4-year-old loves it. Well, he'll be 5 next week.
Yeah.
But he loves building stuff.
Yeah.
I've talked to various people on the podcast about the fact that when you're young, you love just building stuff.
Yeah.
You make paper airplanes.
Yeah.
And you make stuff.
Yeah.
And then over time, you sort of have not beaten out of you. Like he's still told to create. You know. But over time, you sort of lose it.
Yeah.
But actually, does that fall into is there a responsibility there for the sector or employers to keep that fire, almost the fire lit in a child, young person, all the way through to what we now class, I didn't even realise, college pre-employability.
Yeah. In terms of when young people have made their mind up, it's probably earlier than 16 in most cases. And it's too late for us at that point in time to change somebody's mind if they've got preconceptions or they've been around certain different vocational areas which are not construction that they're more minded or suited to. Construction doesn't lend itself particularly well to young people. I do think that we need to use role models and maybe TV program, things like Bob the Builder. That was great for a generation of people to see the construction. I'll probably show my age now, aren't I? So,
no, not at all. Well, Bob the Builder still goes.
Oh, does it?
He's an American now, but weirdly, maybe they want him in America. But it's still that sort of thing still runs, but it's not as applicable. Yeah. When I was a kid and when my brothers were young, that was it.
Yeah.
It was Bob. I was more Thomas the Tank Engine. Yeah. I wasn't ever going to be a train driver, but my brothers were. Yeah, Bob the Builder. Yeah,
look, I think we've got good. I think there's a lot of employers going to schools and talk about careers. There's a lot of good toolkits, STEM ambassadors, support programs to go into schools. I think a lot of employers go in and talk about themselves. I nearly think there should be something that would be the primary objective should be to go in and kind of raise ambitions and aspirations for the sector, and then be there to be, and my journey or my employment or my opportunity is X or Y. So I nearly think that should be something that we do. But the pre-employability, just coming back round to that, I think, you said, what does it look like? I think we have to have employers at the heart of that, whether that's college run, whether that's run by third sector charities or through local training provision. Because those destinations need to be there. But we also need to find a mechanism for seeing the people that have come into the sector that don't quite fit with, they've done all the pre-employability, they've been here every morning, they've got great attitude, but that specific trade or that kind of nuance of work that they're first exposed to doesn't work for them. So it's not about losing that. Now, whether that's tie-ups with like logistics or warehousing companies where health and safety and PPE and timekeeping is similar, so they're in a related environment, or whether it's actually just a check-in and say you didn't quite, the plumbing didn't quite work, or the carpentry didn't quite work, or what is it that we can do differently? Have you looked at other occupations within the construction sector and try and find that kind of compatibility? And it nearly be the responsibility of the training provider to have that outreach activity with other tentacles where, okay, let's just say somebody is probably more suited. It could be painting and decorating. It could be a plumbing course. Where do we find something outside of what we've offered, but is relative for that young person to get transferred or fast tracked into, so that they can continue their journey? Too many people go through pre-employment and either do or they don't make it. And there's nearly like you get to the end, and that's wrong. We should look at different groups, and some of it, there are neurodiverse. There's lots of different issues and reasons why people don't come into the sector, but we need to, within our profiling, recognise the composition of people and try and manage them and their circumstances, as well as the opportunities that we've got both within the pre-employability and outside within the wider sector. So I suppose it needs to be, doesn't it always, and everything, it needs to be joined up. There needs to be, these things shouldn't be done in splendid isolation.
We've been on this a while, but I do want to dig a bit deeper into it, because at the moment it's sort of led by FE or what, providers, if you will. And
I don't think that's FE. You've said FE. I don't think.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not. That's not a slur on FE at all. Yeah. I'm not. What I'm trying to get into is that there are people that are paid to do this at the moment. Yeah. And when you give or make the employer or bring the employers in, their general what they need is to make money in their business in order to continue their business. So how does that money, does the funding come from the pot of money that's been given as part of what we talked about earlier, or is there a sustainable model for that? Because I think that's maybe the difficulty.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to put you on.
No,
we're not going to fix the world right now.
Yeah.
You are a person who I know thinks about these things a lot and sits at tables where people talk about it.
Yeah. There are some really, really exemplary employers who kind of grab this, and run with it and run their own and some of them at their expense and at their peril. They've kind of invested super sums of money in it, and it's not kind of worked out for them the way they would want to, and a lot of altruism and some major contractors as well. But generally speaking, I don't think there are enough employers that support young people. Okay. So I don't know that I'd push back on training. I'd push back in some cases on employers. There was a point in time where we talked about a skills gap. We have got a skills gap, but we've also got a workforce gap. Because I think if we can plug the workforce gap, we can work with that talent to develop their skills. Yeah, there are thousands of people in the sector who are labourers. And they could be nip hands as a steel fixer, they could be hod carriers, and there are some development pathways for some of those people. But there are a lot of people that it could be banksmen, it could be plant and vehicle marshals that are in this ancillary role because of where they're employed. They might work for a company that only supplies vehicle marshals or something like that, traffic marshals, particularly on some of these infrastructure projects. Yeah. They get up every morning. They've got all the PPE. They've totally engaged in that opportunity. And I know there are people, you've got hod carriers, probably work for you, that have done the job forever and they only ever want to be a hod carrier. And that's absolutely perfect. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But there are also people that are in the sector that haven't, we've never taken them to one side and said, this is where you've been, you've shown all these skills. Where's that development pathway for you? And that's because I think we're very transient and very kind of silo, the different employment opportunities there are within the sector. And if we could keep feeding that hopper where we allow people to develop their skills and we can feed it in with new entrants, because that's progressive, we probably could get somewhere. And then it becomes less of a skill shortage because we're upskilling. But employers don't. When we exited the European Union, for whatever the rights of, I know, very, very, very dangerous. But skilled workers that we could have recruited, we could bring over from Eastern Europe, and therefore the skill shortage was solved by overseas workers. And if we haven't got enough people, before we even get into the ageing workforce and everything like that, and the amount of people losing, if we haven't got enough people that are skilled, you've either got to keep paying more money to attract those skilled workers, or somebody's got to go, this just isn't sustainable. Yeah. So therefore we need to work with a different demographic of people in order to get them into the industry to start to upskill them.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's the difference, isn't it? So employers need to kind of, in some cases, man up and just go, I'm not going to solve my problem unless I want to keep paying that premium price. The only way I'm going to find the workforce, and sometimes it's the sustainability of that business. You say, how can they afford to train? How can you afford not to train if you've got an aging workforce and you see your opportunities only growing to have a successful company, yet the nucleus of people you've got to do that diminishing? The only way that you can change that, unless again you're paying that money, is to go, I need to invest in the people that I want to attract and train them the way that I want to train them in order to future-proof my business.
Yeah.
And some really good companies have got people as their biggest risk. You know, when you look at the risk register, what's the biggest risk to us succeeding as a company? And it's, will we have the people to meet the skills gaps?
Yeah.
And construction companies, I think for too long, we've relied on different solutions. And now we need to get to the point where, you know, it's not like the energy clock in terms of if we don't do something around climate, we're going to be, but it's similar in terms of the scale of the problem if we can't recruit the talent we need. You know, I mean, part of the Construction Skills Mission Board we talked about earlier was the funding was to create the ability to deliver 1.5 million homes for the government, but the industry is bigger than that, way bigger than that. And we need to do more to attract that talent pool.
Well, speaking of attracting talent pools, disadvantaged learners and social mobility. So what barriers are disadvantaged people still hitting that the industry doesn't really talk about?
I think the industry has changed for the better, not just in my lifetime, but in more recent years. We don't hang people up now through when they come on for their
Thank the Lord.
on their first day. But I think, and let's take mental health, if you want as a case in point. The industry is a lot better now with mental health first aiders about recognising some of the problems we've got, and they're still too big. But recognising we've got mental health first aiders, and a lot more companies are asking the questions around mental health. There's mental health toolkits. There's great construction charities that support mental health awareness. And we're doing a lot more to recognise that within the workforce. But when you talk about the spectrum and you talk about neurodivergence and the different ways that people present, and there's a hangover from COVID, particularly around young people, but also not neurodivergence and what that means in terms of the autistic spectrum. I don't think yet that, you know, the majority of employers, and I'm sure there would be some that probably ring or write in or kind of, you know, say how well they are doing around neurodivergence. But you were talking about this we were talking about pre-employability. You've nearly got to know some of the different kind of compositions of people when you're running these programs, if you want to ensure that the people that you've got coming through have got the necessary support mechanisms, and we've got the ability within the people that are training them to recognise different circumstances. And
So is that the, because disadvantaged learners, what are we talking about there? Are we talking about people who don't have the ability to go somewhere and learn? So their social circumstances are in such that they can't, not that they're neurodivergent or they have special educational needs or anything, but they just can't. Some people have they are in the SEN, and they maybe are neurodivergent, but also there are some people who just live in an area and they can't get to. I mean, you live out in the sticks, you know. So if you lived where you live, you wouldn't necessarily be able to get to a training course.
Look, social mobility is the entirety of things. So it might be neurodivergence in terms of people's ability to kind of function and learn. It might be domestic circumstances and or other conditions, and just that whole poverty, that whole spectrum of what that means in terms of social mobility. So I think there are different things in there. I've seen firsthand just the transformational change in a young person that's engaged in a pre-employability pathway, who's come and has been green, has been really unsure. They might have gone, I think I want to be in construction. and has come on a journey, and then has probably had a couple of checks, in terms of an employer, somebody like me turning up and saying, if that's, if you want a job in construction, you're going to have to be here on time, and you're going to have to. And I think some of the boot camps that we've got now, and some of the pre-employability, the NHBC, for argument's sake, have got training hubs, and they've got a corrugated roof on them. They're outside, so we're trying to make these environments more site-based. A lot of the good pre-employability programs are very site-based, site hours, site conditions, outside training. It's not classroom warm and cozy. It's about preparing people for that, that industry and sector they're going into. And I've just seen how people who may have otherwise, sometimes I was with a young person on Monday. They'd been tagged, and of course, that from a point of view of employability had really limited their potential. But they've gone on a pre-employability course, and they're probably the most committed as anybody I'd seen at the end of that program to pursue a career in construction. And they knew more about me and about my occupation, about why I was there, than any of the other people in. And not that the others weren't of a good level, but that person was absolutely trying to go overboard to try and create the right impression from an employer point of view to be given a chance.
Yeah.
And I think it's that life chance, it's giving people a chance. And
well, I think that's the key bit, isn't it? You are not the sum. You're not the sum of the mistakes that you've made.
Yeah.
And the construction industry is really good for that.
Yeah. No, we are good for that.
We are really good for that. You don't become the sum of the mistakes that you've made, which I think is great. We talk about the NHBC with the hubs. They have like a boot camp model essentially. They do. They're on block release. Same as Site Ready do a boot camp.
But it's still
model.
an apprenticeship. There's the preamble.
The start of So they have a 93% achievement and 81% of them percent job outcomes.
Yeah,
that's in your report.
Yeah. I'm glad you're not testing me on these numbers.
No, I'm not going to ask you what they are. That wouldn't be very fair. But why does that work so well?
Yeah.
Why are those numbers so high?
Okay. I think it's great employer engagement. I think. Yeah, look, it's a combination of things. I think maybe the selection process. There's a buy-in. So the NHBC it's a response. There's a core contractor there at the heart of all of those centres, a home builder. There's a long-term development pipeline, and there are subcontractors then within that kind of demographic within that area who are committed to kind of using that as a model. Maybe there's a little bit of leverage from the home builders in terms of how that works, and if you want to work for us, you've got to get involved in the training. But and so it should be, rightly so. But we've then got good conditions, right working conditions that are going to bring the people into the centre, the young talent, and give them a first-hand experience of what they're going to then be doing when they get out on site. I think we've got the ability. I think there is a bit more of the wraparound support there, and I think maybe the young people feel closer to the workplace than where they might do otherwise if they were on a block program on a college course. But there is some really, really good FE as well. That does really well. But
we're not. We're definitely not about FE bashing. No. I don't. Some of my good friends like Jack Dawson, right? He's at oh my gosh, the college. I've forgotten it now, but he runs Super Trial, but he Hartford Regional College.
Okay.
You've got places at Oaklands.
No, very good.
Loads of places. Really, really good
Yeah.
provision.
Yeah. Going back to pre-employability, for me, a lot of it is employer engagement. The hubs have got great employer engagement. The FE colleges that do well have got great employer engagement.
Exactly it.
And it's not an employer that's going to consume 25 bricklayers or 25 carpenters. It could be loads and loads of SME contractors, all of which are committing to 1 or 2 apprentices a year, but there's a community.
Well, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? Yeah. Because if the employer gets involved with the provider, whatever that is, be it FE, be it block release, wherever it is, be it like any sort of boot camp, if they get involved, then some amount of those people that in the pre-employment actually come in, and then people want to go to the place where they've come from because they know that they're going to get a job, and then more employers are going to go there because you get the best people, and that's how it works. That's how it works in every industry, right? In everything in life, you know, you get the best people. I don't know, banking. You get some of the best people working at Goldman Sachs because they're one of the best banks, so they get to pick the best people, right? That's
I mean, there's 2 points in the conversation we've had so far that I just want to come back if I can. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
One is you got all this pre-employability, and you got, but I think employers need to kind of go. Sometimes we need to kind of go, which is something I try and do, is offer the work experience. So pre-employability is great, and you're looking for someone who's coming through who's going to be a long-term fit for your business, but also be real about short-term. You know, a lot of these programs, some of the outcomes are when you've finished a program, you'll either get an interview or you might get a week's job trial with somebody. More employers have got to step up and be willing to offer young people a 1 or a 2 week job trial, and not from a point of view of I think it's important for their development. I think it's confidence that if they've come in, particularly if we're talking about social mobility, and they're coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, to get them into that classroom, to get them to be interested, to get them to go through that program. Can you imagine how disappointing that would be to just, there's no employer there, there's you know, but if we can harness a more, and I think that's where supply chains come into it, to be perfectly honest. I think major contractors take hold of this and they could nearly say, you have to offer pre-employability. I'm working in Birmingham, and we've got a particular location in Birmingham where every fortnight I've got 2 new entrants coming from very, very hard to reach areas, often with conditions, who we are trying to give 2 weeks work experience to. Now, there is a job at the end for those that have got the right attitude, and it flows quite nicely into conducively at the point they're finishing. There is an opening on site that might work for them. But I'm also realistic about anybody that there isn't an opportunity for. Are they right for me? Are they right for the type of work that I've got, whatever that may be? And in which case, how do I keep that level of interest? And in a lot of cases, I would offer to be a reference on their CV. And I suppose that's more my constructor role, because if somebody's shown a level of commitment, I'd want to kind of pay back to them, even if I haven't got an opportunity. What can I do with you to help you get into the sector? What does your CV look like? Who are you writing to? What is it you want to do? And try and help that person. But if we can use, but a lot of him, and more often than not, people have said to me, I don't know that we need a young person. I don't know whether they've got a job. And then literally somebody's been there 2 or 3 days and they're kind of on the phone to me. What do we need to do to keep this person? Yeah? Because literally it's transformation. The person's changed insurmountably from where they were coming in weeks ago. But you've won that battle in terms of hearts and mind with someone on site who had a bit of a preconception that young people weren't all that great, and, you know, was it going to be hard work? And then all of a sudden somebody's come in and they're offering something to us in the workplace. So I think we need to work harder. The industry needs to work harder with trying to just don't necessarily look for a skilled worker. Look to offer an opportunity where we can incrementally build the skills of that person on that journey. If they're not suitable for us at the end of the day, and we can help them get to a different destination within the sector, all of that's progressive. And that's maybe where, I don't know about the report, but that's maybe where, you know, CLC and the government, we need to think about what we're doing with these people. How many of them are ending up in the sector? How many of them are suitable for the sector? Because that's the bit that we need to, those that don't transpire into a role at that point in time, what's the talent pool of people that we've got left? Which I think is where the armed forces do well. They're a captive audience, aren't they?
Well, one of the things that we talk about in GSQ and at Site Ready and with everyone that I ever meet, actually, normally, is we hire for talent and train skill. So you hire, you don't actually have to. There are a bunch of talents we talk about a lot, zero talent skills.
Yeah.
turn up on time. Don't need any talent for that. You need to turn up on time. That's not a difficult thing to achieve. Turn up every day. That, sometimes for some people that is hard.
It is.
And some of these things are hard. But you can learn that, and it becomes compound. It becomes, I managed to get in 2 days last week. Do you reckon you can make 3 days next week? Oh yeah, I reckon I could do that. And then by the, then you're ending up. Well, I've been in 3 weeks solid now, and look at my nice pay packet at the end, and it's a great thing, isn't it?
But that's the other point I guess I was looking to make, which when you're recognising there that that person who's turned up 2 days that first week and then 3 days the next week is still of value to the sector, but your conditioning, your education, your knowledge of the way different people present is broad enough to be understanding of some of the circumstances that may be there, particularly if you're working with a more difficult demographic. And I think a few years ago, a former Secretary of State launched what was called the Social Mobility Pledge. It was all about recognising young people and pathways. And I advocate that to any company that I kind of work with, because for me it means something that you're kind of. But I think with that, well, I suppose there's a different version of that. Have we got something sector specific where we and have we got, like we've got mental health first aiders, have we got something where neurodivergence and an appreciation of all the different spectrum of conditions that people could come with is in the grasp of people like you and or the trainers who are supporting these programs to ensure that we are doing our very best, our level best for every young person who comes to us, because it might not be that person who's been there 5 days on week one or only 2 days on week one or 3 days on week two, but they've still got the potential to come into the sector. But the sector needs to be tolerant, but you only get that tolerance if you have an appreciation. So I think the toolkit that we need for the people who are doing the training needs to be broad enough to capture that different. And then maybe there's a badge that comes with that. I'm not necessarily about giving it a badge, but maybe there is something.
Who doesn't love a badge?
Oh, okay.
Who doesn't love a badge? Literally.
Yeah.
Well, that sort of brings us on nicely to our next piece, the competency. So we're talking CSCS, capability. This is hot topic at the moment. My sort of real big question here is, does the CSCS system actually measure competence or just attendance?
Okay. I guess I should have known that you were going to ask me challenging questions.
It's because you are a knowledgeable guy that I'm asking almost more difficult questions, and I don't want to lead you. So if you think neither of those is applicable, I'm happy. I'm open to that too.
Okay. CSCS doesn't shape qualifications. CSCS it's a framework, isn't it? It's a card system. It recognises competency. It's not necessarily designing the competency. We've got a whole infrastructure, whether that's CLC, CITB, awarding bodies who are designing qualification, government, designing qualifications, and CSCS is a card scheme that recognises the competency. It's not providing, to a greater extent, any learning or training relative to the cards then that are issued. Industry is recognising that. CSCS is recognising the output of the competency. Yeah. Now we could have a debate around, is an MVQ competency, but it's not an attendance. There's nothing on CSCS that's attendance related. You don't get a certificate for turning up on a course for a week and it's recognised on a CSCS card, unless I'm mistaken.
No. I agree with you.
There is a massive problem around competency, and I think the Building Safety Act is only going to compound that. I think what's going to change over the next few years is probably more seismic than we've ever been. When we get granular around, I think I was using an example when we talked about fire stopping for bricklayers. And fire stopping, because of Grenfell and the Building Safety Act, is relevant for a lot of things. But it's not just that. I think I also used an example about material selection. So it could say sleeve anchor or raw bolt on a schedule. And then all of a sudden, if the individual that's going to fix something, the buyer couldn't source the actual product and he's found something similar, the individual who's then fixing that, which the material selection is different to the specification, has got to have the ability to go, this isn't what it says I should be fixing. Yeah, so that's the SCEBs, when we talk about skills, knowledge and behaviour, this is a behavioural thing where somebody's got to go, that's not right, that's not what it says. We can't just go, that will do. Yeah, whether it's a fire collar, whether it's a fire break, whether it's a fixing, anything that's got that's different. We've really got to make sure that from a workforce point of view, but that's a completely different mindset. I'm not saying we train people in that, but there's got to be behavioural changes within that. But there's a lot of things that are going to be new standards now that we're going to recognise that fall outside of an NVQ and or an apprenticeship that are, I think fast topping was the one we used from a brickwork point of view. It's not in the NVQ, it's not in the apprenticeship, but it's fundamental that the installation of a fire barrier, a fire break, is done correctly. Now, you could find that some home builders took some responsibility and said, we need to make sure that you watched a 30-minute video.
Yeah.
GSQ and any other brickwork contractor could say, we've designed our own course. But where is the industry accreditation? Where is industry? And that's, that's where CLC are now at this point in time, because part of the sector groups now is to recognise what does this new qualification landscape look like post-Grenfell, where we're looking at every occupational area from substructure to superstructure, and we're working across them, and we're saying, looking at those skilled pathways, what are different levels of competency that we need to see for any individual trade operation relative to the building safety regulator. And we've always had occupational working standards, and you go back 15, 25, well, when I started as a carpenter, it was hand-cut roofs. There was nearly not a truck. Well, there was, but it was early days. So the qualifications and the skills and the disciplines have changed, whether that's material, technology, or just the way that we work. So they've always changed. We talk about green skills and apprenticeship. Everything's getting greened. Sustainability will be a bigger part of future landscape qualifications. So I know the qualifications are always moving, but I feel that the things that we need to think about now relative to Grenfell and to ensure that we've got competent, compliant, safe people is going to create a different set of skills dynamic, and they're going to be what would have been a manufacturer's installation instructions. Most of that is going to have to morph to a competency-based assessment or a training aid that supports the individual to be able to install that. And we've got to be able to evidence that because of Grenfell.
Yeah, I think that is it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And some people say it's like a ticket culture almost.
Yeah.
And we were talking about before we press play the idea that there are boxes that need to be ticked, but it's the behaviour that goes alongside
100%.
what the tick in the box is. That is actually, and the tick in the box is essentially the competency tick, if you will.
Yeah.
So has this person been trained?
Yeah.
Has this person been shown?
Yeah.
Has this person shown their competency?
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
then we can.
Yeah.
Then eventually we can tick the box,
Yeah.
but all of those things still need to apply every time, rather than it just being, he did a training course one time, and the CPD behind it. And this is something that I know you're passionate about, continuous development, which I think is only a good thing, as long as it's able to be funded, I guess, because if it's difficult. Social point. We're being taxed like no, there's no tomorrow. The government's taxed in different ways, and it is what it is, right? But if you're taking Billy the bricklayer and you're saying, right, well, you need continual professional development. Well, how is Billy the bricklayer, who is already struggling to pay his mortgage and already struggling to do all the things, and is already struggling to make money out of his bricklaying? How do we encourage them to then, by the way, you've got to go on this course. Can we make the course free? Is there some, and I guess that's where the tables that you sit around and have those conversations, and valuable. Yeah. I don't mean like you're a table sitter. I mean, actually they're valuable conversations to be having with people.
But we have to be real as well, for whether it's the business or whether it's the individual. If that's your ability to trade, you need that. There are a lot of occupations where you need to demonstrate professional competency, more than just construction. And
Yeah, for sure.
And I think sometimes whether it's CITB or whether it's COC or whether it's CSC, we're looking around to blame somebody for the fact that somebody's got to go on a training course and who's going to pay for that.
Yeah.
I don't know that other sectors have those same conversations.
No, you're probably the difficult, and this is, I'm not self-employed.
Yeah.
Just to put my stall out there. Yeah. Majority of the people who work within the construction sector are self-employed.
Yeah.
Now, as an employed person, my employer can put me on a training course and I still get paid for going on the training course.
And depending on what that training course is, that employer might be able to get grants and funding. Or, for
sure. And again, I'm not knocking the, but that's because I'm an employee of that.
Yeah.
As a self-employed person, it becomes more difficult because you then, if I'm not in a direct output business like bricklaying, if I have to go on, I don't know, a working at height course to show that, or no, a fire stopping course, right? That is a day that I'm not earning money to then pay someone to teach me how to, and I can maybe claim some of that back.
Yeah.
But how do we sort of, that's a square peg in a round hole almost.
But it is, but all right, you start your journey. I mean, either you're coming in through pre-employability and or you're learning on the job. But if you're looking to come into the sector, there are things that you need. You can't work without a CSCS card. And a green card isn't enough. You need to show that you're competent more so now than ever before. And the incremental things that we've got coming through, Sam, to be perfectly honest, yes, there might be fast stopping course, there might be behavioural courses, but they are increments rather than they are. And some of that might well be that the employer decides, if I want another 10 people to meet the demands of or to meet the opportunities I've got to pay some money towards that because the 10 people that are there haven't got that training. And some of it may well, so there might be an element of co-funding that the individual and the employer go, look, I'll put you on the course, but I'm expecting you to pay half the money or something like that. But we just need to be real. That's what we need. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you probably didn't need a sit. People now have to go and sit. A lot of it's delivered in pre-employability. But if you're an adult coming into the sector and you're looking to join construction and you've got transferable skills from another sector, if you haven't got a CSCS card and haven't passed your health and safety test, you've got to go into a CSC, you've got to go to a test centre, do your revision, sit your test and apply for your card. So there's a cost there. So everywhere there is a cost, it's just people need to recognise it's that determination enough for me to, I talk to young people about wanting to work in the sector and they go, I go, have you ever offered to do a job trial or go to a company and say, I'd be prepared to work for nothing to show you how, and sometimes a young person will go, what, you want me to work for nothing? I go, you're 17, you're 18 years old. It's a week in your life.
What are your outgoings at 16?
Well, but this is the rest of your career. You want to work in construction. You're really clear about that. You've seen an employer you like. And I'm saying to you, maybe think about doing a job trial. Say to that employer, you're that committed and you're trying to make this breakthrough, that USP that you're creating with this employer to say, I really want to work for you. I'm that committed that I'd be prepared to do a week's job trial without pay. One, from an employer point of view, I don't think many people would take advantage of that. But basically, that young person puts himself in that marketplace where the employer goes, wow, you're too good for me to let go. They're not. So that week that you give is for the development, for the prosperity and the earning potential that you're going to have for a lifetime in construction. So when we talk about the cost of these courses, these training programs, and yes, people are self-employed, much as it's difficult, you have to look at that and say, what have I got in front of me? What's my earning potential for this skill? I need to go on a fire break installation course, which is going to cost me X, and it might be a day's money. But what do I get when I get there? But I do feel employers have got a co-investment there in terms of recognising that if there isn't a queue of people, if you need to stimulate some activity, you might want to say to people, I would, we would share the cost or something like that.
Well, yeah, and I'm sort of playing devil's advocate, right? Someone who is forward thinking would think the way you've just
Yeah,
said.
yeah,
Is that
yeah.
you know, I've got 20 years in the industry.
yeah,
Every 5 years, I have to do.
Yeah.
You know, say I'm a bricklayer in my 30s, right? I've probably got 20, maybe 25 years in the industry left.
Yeah.
You know, I need to. Every 5 years, I have to do a CSCS card.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to do. You know, I want to be on a house building site, so I need to know how to do fire breaks. I need to know, you know, NHBC or whatever the insuring bodies best practice. I need all of these things. So can I, you know, or can they put on a course for me to go on? You know, does a day's wages? Yes, there's the pain now, but certainly if you get it from the beginning, as we were saying, sort of before we came on, if you get in from the beginning, it's a USP for you. I am the bricklayer who knows, who has all of these accreditations, and maybe in the past, maybe still, there's a bit of like, oh, what, these guy with all the, you know, that sort of, he sort of feels like he's better than me. But maybe that comes from a place of insecurity. It certainly would from me come in that way. Well, we have talked all about so many things, and I think after this, people can just listen and fix it all. Of all of the things that you've just said, you've laid it all out for them. The last thing that we always do is our tradition. If you could have anyone sitting in the same chair as you right now, who would you have me talking to, and maybe why?
I think there's some good people in the industry. I think there are some good people in government. In a way, you want to try and think about somebody that's going to listen and make a difference. I genuinely think.
For you, who would you pick? Who would you want to listen to? I know you.
Who would I want to listen to?
Or who would you want sitting in that chair? It doesn't have to be like who we think. It's like who would you want to sit there and have a conversation with me, and me pick apart them in a similar way to I sort of have with you today. Although I don't think I've picked you apart at all. I think you've certainly held your own, and I'm playing a little bit devil's advocate today.
Okay,
but
I think Mark Farmer or Mark Reynolds, from a point of view of construction, two of the people I most respect in terms of where they are and their ability for people would want to listen to them. They truly make a difference. Okay. So that's who I'd pick.
Well, thank you, mate. Thank you so much for coming today. I know you're busy doing all of the things that we've just talked about. But yeah, I'm really glad that you've made the time to come out, and hopefully we'll get you back in at some point in the future, and we'll be having a completely different conversation.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it'd be good. Look, I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Thank you.